And what I say is when I teach people how to, I'm going to say a really scary word for people, and it's budget. I teach that budgeting is actually freedom. If you want freedom in any area, if you want freedom in your health, you got to have discipline, because if you don't have discipline, you're not going to eat well. You're not going to get your 10,000 steps. You're not going to do your workouts. Same thing with your finances. If you have no discipline and you're just spending it on whatever, then you're never going to have freedom. You're going to be working till the day you die, because you're never going to be able to save enough to support yourself or support your family. So you got to look at that. That's another mindset flip, and that discipline is actually going to help you experience more freedom. And when you're spending, whether it's for your business or your personal, you're spending in accordance with your values. So that's really what a budget is. It's you deciding what you're going to do rather than it just happening.
Hey, everybody, this is Dustin Bogle, your host, with another episode of the Lunch with a Punch podcast. And today is a special episode because we're going to be talking about probably one of your guys' favorite subjects, and that is money. And so I brought in a money expert, somebody that is going to help us all to just improve our relationship with money, our habits, and just the things that we do with money as business owners. So, again, gym owners, this is one that you want to pay attention to. If you're busy, you're working out, you're running, again, open up a note app. If you are at a desk, open up a notepad, because I know we're going to be dropping some major golden nuggets for you guys. So my guest is the owner of Your Fitness Money Coach. So if that doesn't speak to you guys, I don't know what will. He's also one of us. He's a fellow gym owner, and the facility that he owns is called Total Body Boot Camp and Performance Center. So again, he's in the trenches. He knows what we're going through, guys. And then if you haven't heard his podcast, I do want to highlight that. And that is Your Fitness Money Coach podcast. Subscribe, guys. I listen to it, and there's some very great actionable steps for you to implement so that you can have more financial wealth, because we help our people in our fitness facilities with generational health. So we want to make sure you get some generational wealth going too, right? And so my guest is no other than Billy Hofacker. Billy, are you ready to do this, my friend?
Dude, I am so pumped. I couldn't sleep last night. I am jazzed up to connect with you because I feel like we're like best friends now. We realized talking off, we had a lot in common. So I really enjoyed connecting with you. And I know your audience is great. And I'm really excited for what we're going to dive into.
Yes. So yeah, we had many similarities, and I'm sure we'll dive into some of those today. But guys, I'm here on your behalf. I'm here as your voice, the listeners I'm talking about, to really pull from Billy the best things that we can put into practice so that we can have more of a impact and an income, right? We started our business because we want to help people, but hey, it's not a bad thing to also want to make a good life and a good living for you and your family. So Billy, I want to get into your story, man. Like, how did you get into the fitness industry? Where did that entry point occur in your life?
Going back all the way, I'll keep this part sort of brief, but I'm not sure if people can connect with this. Maybe so. A lot of people have a story where they lost a lot of weight and then they realized how great it was and they helped other people lose weight. I was kind of the opposite. I was really thin as a kid, but neighborhood kids used to they called my brother Bones, and they called me Bones too, because I was his brother. So that was really good for my confidence. But that led to me wanting to get bigger and stronger. I was bullied. I won't go too far into that, but I was bullied, and I just had a desire to improve myself physically. I also got to the point where, of course, I was interested in girls. I was interested in sports and athletics. And for all those reasons, I got really into it myself. Turns out I have a little bit of an addictive type personality. And when I do something, I do it hard. And that's what I did with fitness. And I was able to really transform myself physically. I was never like this huge bodybuilder type, but I definitely made a dramatic difference in my body, in my confidence. Nice. And I ultimately got into martial arts, which I really enjoyed. And I was just so interested in, I'm going to be honest, a lot of people say, and it's great, and I'm a little jealous, to be honest with you, when they say, I really just want to help people, and I just want to help them become more fit. That's not untrue for me. I really like that. And even as a financial coach, I love the idea of people transforming their lives because I saw what happened with myself. But if I'm totally honest, I really just love the subjects as well. And that's a huge driver for me. I just really got fascinated with how to become stronger, how to burn body fat, and then how to accumulate wealth and what you can do with that. I get really excited about the actual topics, which leads me to wanting to be my best, which is part of coaching. So that's how I got into it at an early age. I knew I wanted to do something in the physical realm. I had thought about physical therapy. I had thought about doing some kind of medical field. I thought about, of course, gym ownership, training, all of that. I had a mentor. I would say I was a mediocre student at best in high school. I knew I would graduate at only 17. So that's one advantage I had. I had the ability to turn it around. I realized that I don't want to say going nowhere fast, but kind of like that. I knew that if I really wanted to do something in the science type field, I really did need to get a little more serious academically. So that's what I did. I ended up really seeing a huge turnaround. It's actually a pretty cool story if you want me to share it, because it has to do with, I think it has to do with coaching and getting the needs that we have. All right. So I was a mediocre student. I really just did what I could. I was the guy cheating off my girl, having my girlfriend do my homework and not really too serious about school. I was an athlete, and athletes weren't as smart. They weren't academics. I just never saw that connection. I just saw it as I'm either going to be into sports or I'm going to be into academics. Coincidentally, when I was in 6th grade, I was selected into a special group. It was talented and gifted. And I was in this group that I didn't feel like I fit in, but at the time I was young and stupid and I thought the other kids were nerds. But I joined that group. So I obviously had some potential there. I just completely let it go through high school. And I was at this point where I knew I had to turn things around. So there were 2 pieces to it. One was I became really good friends for the first time with somebody that I perceived, for whatever reason, because we talk a lot about mindset. It's one of I just jotted it down quickly before we started. It's one of the first things I talk about with clients is their mindset when it comes to money, just like our clients have a lot of times mindset issues when it comes to getting in shape. For whatever reason, I didn't see myself as smart. There wasn't a really valid reason for it. Nobody ever told me I was stupid. I just didn't connect that. Never thought I could do it until I met this guy at community college, where it's the only college I could have gotten into. And I was taking remedial classes at first. And I did have work ethic. I was trying, I was going for extra help. And I came across this guy who I just thought he was so cool. He was a few years older. He had a full ride as a fullback to Temple University. It fell through because he tore his ACL, and he was just, funny, and we really clicked. And as I spent more time with him, I saw some differences. I saw while the other kids were maybe going out to party or they were wasting time, he was spending time on his studies. I remember one day we got our tests back in anatomy, and I got like a 76, and I was really pumped because it was a really hard topic. He got a 92, I believe, and he went right up to the professor and he was asking her about the 2 questions that he got wrong. And something clicked in me. That was one of the moments, and there was another one. But in that moment, I quite literally said to myself, that's the only difference between, his name was Justin. That's the only difference between Justin and I, is that he's doing those little things and I'm not. I'm happy with my 76. I'm happy not to put in the extra work or just to have lower expectations. Then right around the same time, as I was getting more motivated, I was a pre-calculus class, and the professor's name was Dr. Skernick. And I would go to his office every Tuesday and Thursday for extra help. It was Tuesday, Thursday at 10:30 a.m. One day I'm there just like I am every Tuesday, Thursday. I'm sitting at the desk working on a problem, and he's sort of like standing behind me, and he stops me in the middle of doing the problem. And he said something that changed my life. And I was 18 years old. He said, Billy, he goes, do you know that I've been a professor here for, however many years, and this is a PhD in mathematics, really smart guy. He said, I have office hours every Tuesday and Thursday, and you're the only one that ever comes. He said, you seem like the kind of guy that can do anything you put your mind to. And I can't even explain it. That did something to me. That changed me from the inside. I'm not going to say it was magic and everything was perfect after that. I still had to work through some things. And I don't know what it was. It wasn't like, again, it wasn't like I was beaten down and told I was stupid. It was just something that I lacked. I just missed it along the way. And I needed somebody to believe in me more than I believed in myself. And I could cry telling that story because I know the difference it made. So I went from being that kid I described in high school to just a couple of years later. It was such a surreal moment because I remember at one point I had a group of kids coming up to me asking me to help them with their work, and it was chemistry. And I just shook my head and like, you guys have no idea what I was doing just last year, and now you're looking at me like I'm the mentor. And the reason I share that is to illustrate the value of mindset, of the beliefs. We know that we're never going to outperform our self-image, so we need to pay attention to how we see ourselves. And also to illustrate the importance of the needs that the people around us have. There may be, and I'm speaking to myself as well, there might be somebody that just needs, and I could point to lots of examples like that, where somebody said something and it made all the difference. So who in our lives can we do that for? Is it a spouse? Is it a child? Is it a friend? Is it a client? Is it a team member? And we know Ken Blanchard said the last standing ovation most people had was the day they graduated high school. So we have that encouragement need that doesn't get filled oftentimes. So it's just a great opportunity for us. But anyway, I kind of went roundabout there, but that's how I got into the exercise science realm. That guy that I mentioned, he had a profession that I had really never heard of. I'll say he was a personal trainer. I mean, this is going back different lifetimes ago, it feels like. And I was like, seriously, like you're getting paid to help people he was working with a lot of women, to help women lose weight and feel better about themselves. And he was making really good money. In fact, I was still kind of going the physical therapy route. And one day I happened to be doing my aid hours. I was a physical therapy aide. And I just happened to see the physical therapist paycheck. It's not that I was really trying to be nosy, but it was right there and I couldn't help it. I was like, wait a second. I was like, I think I'm making more than her. And she had like a 5-year degree in physical therapy. And I just saw some things in that field that I wasn't crazy about. And it just happened to be my experience. And I just pursued the fitness field. I can say I have never had a real job. So that was going back to, post high school and community college. And obviously there's been lots of transitions and ups and downs, but I have been in the coaching field ever since that day. It's been a combination of fitness, martial arts, and finances.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Billy. That was one of my favorite stories I've heard on this podcast, specifically the one about belief, because I think that you're right. Sometimes you need someone to just come into your life and believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. And that gives you the strength to step forward into that. And I know we're going to dive into money. And I know that is something that you might hear people say phrases like, I don't believe I can get out of debt. I don't believe I can never get ahead. I don't believe I can get my head up from underwater. And so it starts there. And I bet you come in, you instill that belief in them and share your story or share stories of other people that you've helped. And that is the belief they needed to step in, to someone to put into them to step into the strength to overcome their circumstance. And it's funny because when you brought up the program with the physical therapist, I thought of a talk that I gave to interns at a local university, and it was for people getting their kinesiology degree. And I just knew my audience. So immediately I got up and I said, how many people here are taking this degree in the direction of physical therapy? And 9 out of 10 kids raised their hand. And I said, keep your hand up if you chose it, because it's the highest paying gig on the list of jobs you can get with the kinesiology degree. And almost every kid kept their hand up. And I said, let me save you years of heartache of choosing something because of the paycheck and not because of the passion. And nice. I can't tell you that how many people choose their path because of the money and not because it's something they really love. And I meet trainer after trainer that whether they apply to our locations or they open their own gym or just change their path in life because they pick something back in college because, you know, it's for status. It's going to be cool to tell my friends I make this much money. That's really what it is. And at the end of the day, first chase your passion, then the paycheck follows. But when you chase the paycheck first, your passion gets burned out quick, right? And so it's easy to say, but it's hard to do, right? You know, a kid that might hear that and go in one ear and out the other, screw you, I want to get that high paid job. And so that's all you can do. That's the best thing you can do, is try to tell stories about people, you know, stepping into something for the wrong reason and hope it lands, right?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
That's so good. I just have a couple of things to add to that. So one, I couldn't agree more with both of those points you made. But I've also learned over time, and I'm a work in progress, like all of us, but there's extreme value in learning how to coach yourself. So I just encourage the listeners to learn how to coach ourselves, because it's great to have coaches. I have lots of coaches. I have at least 3 paid coaches that I could think of, at least more than that. And those are really important to me. But at the end of the day, the coach is not always going to be with you. So a coach should be giving you tools on how to coach yourself through situations. And I know that could be a whole rabbit hole on how to do that. But the other point is, to your last point about chasing your passion, I think it's the same thing within our business, because I've been guilty of chasing money within the business, as well as clients that I've had or people that I've talked to. It's kind of the same idea. Like, a quick example would be, how can I get this person to become my client? Because if they become my client, I'm going to make money. And that's not necessarily evil, right? It's kind of the point. We need to make a profit, but, and you want to help that person, of course, but rather, how do I move this relationship forward? How do I do something to enhance this relationship? And how do I do that in a way that I'm not necessarily expecting anything back? That kind of mindset shift makes a huge difference with myself. I've noticed you try, and nothing happens until you just kind of do the right things, and then things happen.
I love it. Well, let's shift gears and let's talk about what these gym owners need help with. And that is definitely money, right? Most people want more of it. It solves a lot of problems. And I know that you're a wealth of knowledge on this subject. So what are some things, Billy, that you just see that drive you nuts, that you're like, man, if I could just help people with this, their life will change? Maybe it's from your own experiences, but just things that are common when it comes to just thinking about money, or, habits around money. What are some things that come to mind on that?
I have a few things. And the first one I want to mention is something that always comes up initially with private clients. It's something that definitely came up with me. I didn't share. I guess people can maybe listen to my podcast to hear the story, but I didn't actually share my financial story. But it involves a tremendous turnaround in my own finances, to the tune of being $130,000 in non-mortgage debt. I had debt with creditors. I had medical debt. I had student loans, myself and my wife. We had loans with family, loans with friends. I think I had almost every type of debt you can think of. It all came to a head one day in, I believe it was 2010, when I was getting ready for work. I was living the dream. I was helping people with their fitness. I was married to my amazing wife for almost 15 years now. And I had a knock on the door, and descended the steps, opened the door, and on my stoop is this big, burly looking dude with a thick goatee, tattoos all over his face, piercings everywhere, shaved head. He was actually a really nice guy, but I always say that because it's it's like the picture, right?
Yeah.
I looked past him, and my car was hooked up to his tow truck, and I was really confused because I don't come from a super, definitely very middle class. I don't come from, a really high class area, but I've never really known about car repossessions. It just wasn't something I knew about. I didn't know. Maybe people probably don't go around talking about it. People that have had it done, because it was early in the morning and people probably didn't know it was happening to me. And I'm sure it's really a shameful thing for people, unfortunately, but that's what happened to me. That was my wake up call. And I was just in disbelief. I asked the guy, I said, please, I'll pay it right now. He's like, yeah, I'm really sorry. He was so nice. He said, we actually hooked the tow truck to the car first. We hooked the car to the tow truck first before we let you know, so that, because it is a heart wrenching thing. It's like, come on, man, I got a baby inside and I just need my car. I got to get to work. And it's like, man, I have to detach my emotions from that. So that's how they do it, which was interesting. It makes sense. So I had to get my car back. I had to figure a lot of things out. It was a really disappointing, fearful, discouraging time for our lives. We were quickly losing hope. My wife and I couldn't talk about money without arguing. We were not on the brink of divorce, but it was rough. Again, we couldn't really have those conversations like we can now. We had stacks and stacks of bills up to our eyeballs. We didn't know where to begin. And that's like my first point to your question, which is, what did we do? Like, how the heck? And I used to be judgmental with people when I would see maybe like a really overweight person. And I would think to myself, I'm not proud of this, but how'd you get there? Like, didn't you realize at some point before you got to be like 200 pounds overweight that maybe we should do something? And then here I am standing there feeling like a fool because my car just got repossessed. I have to go up the steps and tell my wife what just happened. It's not the life she signed up for. And yeah, so I've been embarrassed. So I never do that again. When I see somebody who's on drugs, overweight, going through terrible marriage situations, it can happen to anybody because it happened to me. And I did it just one decision at a time. There's that first decision, and then there's that second decision, and then that's the death by 1,000 cuts. It's really the same way that anything happens for good or bad. It's the same way wealth is developed. That's what I've learned now. Wealth is developed. Believe it or not, this is one of the biggest takeaways I can share is success, I believe, in any area is kind of strange. There's this reaping and sowing principle, which is 100% true. You reap what you sow, but the timing is always a little bit unexpected. So for example, your clients start doing their workouts. It's not like all of a sudden, just because they did their workouts, they're now going to be, 40 pounds less or 50 pounds less. It's going to be a whole bunch of decisions that go into that. We can act like we know, yes, in 16 weeks, Mrs. Jones, you're going to lose 27 pounds. But if we're honest with ourselves, we really don't know that. There are so many unknowns. There's so many factors. There's so many things we can or can't control. So I found that with the finances, when people would ask, like, how did you get out of debt? And I remember there were times we made a plan, but I remember times where, and even recently with other things, I can kind of share something similar where we had maybe, I want to exaggerate, but maybe we had like $1.37, and we had a debt that had like $6,000 on it. And we're like, yeah, let's pay it, and you might think like, why would you do that? Like $1.37, like that's not going to make a difference. But it's mind blowing how it does. And I did that recently with something else, with another goal that we had. I had like $5 extra. And yeah, it's not really the $5 that matters. I think it's more about the identity. So that's the thing. This is my long-winded way of sharing that first point. Of a lot of it is about identity. So I encourage the listeners to think about, how do you see yourself when it comes to money? That's a really powerful exercise. Even just doing that. Maybe if you're working out or driving, you could think about it, or you could do it later. You can discuss it with a friend or partner. How do I see myself around money? It was very similar to how did I see myself around school? And if I was honest, I did not see myself as a good student. I saw myself as somebody who was just an athlete and wasn't smart. And yeah, I don't like to say that. And I didn't like to say that I wasn't good with finances. That's why I got into the position I did. But it's kind of like a two-pronged thing. It's the belief, and it's the belief that leads to the fear, which leads to the inaction. So if I'm overweight and I feel like I can't stick with anything, of course, we know what happens. You don't do anything. If I feel right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was the first thing for us and for lots of clients, where we swept things under the carpet for however long, and we looked up, and now we got this big problem. Whereas I try not to live in regret because it made me who I am, and now I'm doing what I'm doing. But if we would have just looked sooner, if we would have just made some different steps, along the way, we probably wouldn't have gotten to that point. But it was that fear of the unknown. And what's so interesting is I have not read this book, but I heard it was really good. If you have kids, it's called "There's No Such Thing as a Dragon," I believe, or it's either "There's No Such Thing as a Dragon" or "There's No Such Thing as a Monster." I think it's Dragon. And basically the premise is that the kid sees the dragon, and it's really big and really scary. And then over time, the parent keeps encouraging them to look at it, and then it shrinks. And then they look at it and it shrinks until they look at enough and there's no dragon. That dragon for me was all of that, those financial issues, all of that debt, character issues. So that's not something you might expect to hear from me, but I learned that we had a character issues for sure. And if you're honest, if you're doing that poorly in any area of your life, I'd encourage you to check your character, because you don't just get into that much debt without being, I don't know, a little dishonest with who you are and what you want and why you want it, and that you're buying things that you really can't afford. And that's not to beat anybody up. It's just to acknowledge the reality that, yeah, we can work on all the externals. We can talk about budgeting and saving and making more money, but without building the foundation, it's going to be potentially a house of cards that might, and I've seen that happen. And we've seen it with weight loss.
Yeah.
I lost 50 pounds and I gained it back.
Yep. What I heard that I really liked in that explanation, thank you. This is extremely valuable. And I think that's the foundation. Like, we're building a house. This is the cement that Billy's dropping for you guys right now. And what I heard is, hey, never judge others. Like, how did you get to that place? But also never judge yourself, because, that's the first part, is forgiveness. Like, okay, I goofed up, but I'm going to own it. And I'm going to step forward with new character traits, and so, yeah, am I buying things for status because I care what other people, think, or because I'm trying to match them, the whole keeping up with the Joneses? Or can I build this new character trait of delayed gratification, and just, I am that person. I'm not the person who buys things impulsively. It's tough because Amazon makes it so you can just click a button and it'd be at your doorstep in 24 hours. So, like, are you that person, or are you the person that says, no, I'm going to sleep on it for a day, a week, and then if I feel like it's a need, so delayed gratification, really understanding what are your needs. If you got food and house and clothes, like, your needs are met, everything after that's pretty much status and, extra. And then the final point that I heard that I wanted to just point out, and tell me if you agree with this, Billy, but your money identity. Most people would identify usually as either a spender or a saver. And if both people in the household, both, of the adults are both spenders, man, it's going to be tough. And if you have one spender, one saver, you probably have a better chance. And if you got two savers, you're going to stack cash fast. So I think, when you said like the identity, not to say those are the only two labels, but I think those are two just very popular ones. And so if you do identify as a spender, then say, I'm going to start making decisions, little, like putting the dollar towards the, the debt that I have, to become a saver, to not be a debt collector, to be a debt eliminator. And so these are things to start saying to yourself. It's kind of with that whole like morning step, wake up and say affirmations. We'll start identifying as someone different, even when you're not now, but you start doing those decisions that make you get closer to that and to make that dragon go away, right? So does that kind of align with your teachings, or I don't know, tell me if there's other.
Definitely. And I just want to kind of jump on that point about the spender and the saver. It's really interesting. And there's even, different areas within those areas. So there might be somebody who's a spender in one area, but not another. And yeah, there's definitely a key to being aware of that. We do an exercise with private clients, which is like a value-based exercise. So values as it relates to money. And what I try to do is teach people that there's different purposes of money. And believe it or not, for all my savers out there, one of the jobs of money is to be spent. That's one of the purposes of money, is to be spent. Money is designed for us to enjoy things. Your clients are buying training. They enjoy that. It's helping them. And I have different areas that I really like to spend money on. One of them is self-improvement. So I'll drop a lot of money on seminars and masterminds and coaching the same way, right? But there's other things, like I don't really care what kind of car I drive. And there's nothing wrong if you do that. Maybe you just have different values, and that's not bad. What is a value? A value just means it's something that's important to you. It's something you enjoy, something you like. Like another one of my values, like a lot of us, is fitness. So I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's a value of mine. So I'll spend time. I might spend money in those values. Maybe it's spending time with family. Maybe that includes vacations. I will say, and I don't want to push my beliefs on everybody else, but I will say I have spent a lot of time researching, talking to people, just getting a real good inside look at a lot of aspects of wealth building. Not always. So nothing is like black and white, 100%. I will say most people will say at the end of the day, the things that were worth it were more experience based, but not always. Some people just say, "Hey, I really like my what is it? My supercar or whatever it is, right?" You know, and that's okay. I don't want people to think that's. I'm saying that's not okay. It's just kind of knowing yourself, knowing what's important.
Love it. I think that's the title of the show. Financial discipline creates financial freedom. So guys, like that is exactly how we want to, approach it. What is that? That's a great like shift for people who are needing to, move in that direction and start to build that character. What is another common mistake you're seeing people doing that's holding them back from building more wealth? That is, a simple strategy or tactic that they can implement. We talked about mindset. Now, is there any like to-dos you can give them as well?
Yeah, I'm gonna get super practical, and then maybe I'll follow that with sort of a general principle that people can think about and make sure they're aware of in their business as time passes. So this way we kind of cover all three. So, and I wasn't planning on this, but we'll cover the foundational stuff, the mindset stuff, and then we cover the practical thing that people can actually start doing today. And then we'll cover something that's important over time that's going to make a huge difference in their ultimate. Sometimes we call it freedom. Sometimes I say abundance. Sometimes I'll say I like the idea of just like your beautiful future, like your big, bright, beautiful future. Because at the end of the day, I think that's kind of what we're all doing, right? Why are we doing all that we do is because we want to create a better future than our present is. So the thing I want to point out now is this idea that, again, I don't know everybody's mindset that's listening, but I will say, and I'm definitely open to Dustin, to your point of view on this. I would say for the most part, most studios, small training gyms, those are kinds of the people that I deal with. For the most part, you're not necessarily going to have a high percentage chance of, let's say, cashing out for like a huge dollar amount. Like, let's say, for example, you're going to build it up in 5 years and sell it for $10 million. Of course, like you got your vision, anything could happen. But I would argue that most training businesses are an excellent cash flow vehicle. Yes. They're not necessarily a great, what you might call like a cash out vehicle. Yes. And the truth is, a lot of us don't want it to be because we like it, right? It's like everyone, I don't know, there's mixed. Some people are like, I want to get off the floor. I don't like training. It's like, well, then why'd you become a trainer? And some of us change our life stage and things change. But I say by and large, like most of us like the idea of training and helping people in that area. So we're okay if we can create a quote unquote ideal business that can help us on the personal side to develop wealth, to develop freedom. I think that's the way to look at it. And it's a big mistake to think that if I just keep hustling and grinding and I do it for long enough, eventually there's going to be a cash out. Where I want you to start thinking about, I want that path to profit, and I want that to start now. I want to start yesterday. I want to start benefiting from this business. And I will say one thing I've noticed is I like the idea of, I don't know if forced efficiency is the right word. I'll use myself as an example. I kind of put myself out there. My wife does not work outside the home. So I have 4 kids. So for me to, let's just say, like not pay myself, like it's quite literally not an option. Yeah. I have to, and I think in some ways that's good. In a lot of ways it's good because it's how it has to be. There's like no other option. I can't say, oh, I'm going to like spend my pay on new equipment. Like that'd be crazy. Like I got to feed my kids. I can't do that. I have to make sure I get, we hear pay yourself first. Good book reference, The Richest Man in Babylon, pay yourself first. He talks about like 10% right off the top. Pay yourself first, pay yourself first, pay yourself first. So I think that's one of the most common things is people just like putting off that day when they're going to pay themselves. And I get it. It's not always easy. And there's lots of things we can look at within the business. I'm trying to give an overview where people can look at this and say, how can I implement this for myself? But then, of course, I work with people on their situations and with all of the details of their finances in their business to determine the path for them. But at the end of the day, it's you have to be up there at the very top of that list of priorities of where that money goes. You can, there's always going to be money for other people. There's always going to be money for the equipment and the taxes and the Facebook ads and everything else, but you have to pay yourself. So I'll get even more practical for folks. One of the first things we want to do, and I don't really like this term, I just got to figure out a better term, is your monthly nut. So we want to know our monthly nut when it comes to the business. So how much does it take to keep the doors open? But I'm actually not referring to that. You do want to know that, but I'm referring to your personal nut. And that's going to differ for people. There's no way I can give even an example because there's so many factors. It depends on the location that you live in. It depends on how much debt you have. It depends on, are you the only income earner in the house, or is there somebody else? So all these factors are going to determine what your monthly nut is going to be. And one of the initial goals would be to pay yourself that. And I sort of create different levels. And I would say as a starting point, let's cover the basic. I think you named them before when you were using your example of, our needs. You want to make sure that your house payment is covered. You want to make sure that your utilities are covered. You want to make sure that you're eating. You want to make sure that you have a vehicle to get to work. You want to make sure that maybe your insurances are covered. Basically, those things that you need or would make life very inconvenient if you didn't have them, make it very difficult to the point where you'd be super inefficient. So what's that number? And then that's not where I want you to stay, because that's not why we did this. So we can just barely scrape by. Once you arrive at that, I want you to figure out, okay, now what do I need to get to that next level? Next level includes saving for retirement or investing for the future. It includes having some fun, because you're allowed to have fun. You deserve it. You have this business so that you can create the life that you want. So maybe you take one vacation or two vacations. Maybe one of them is a staycation. I mean, there's lots of ways you can do this, but you're kind of including basically a little buffer. Yeah.
I was just going to say that speaks to me so much. And I don't know if any of the audience can kind of relate, but I feel so guilty always when I take time off of work, and I almost feel shameful to tell my team, I won't be there next week. You guys are running it without me. And I'm like, I'm leaving them. I'm abandoning them. I'm not being a team player. Like, they're carrying the, extra weight that I would normally carry, but I've gotten better at it. And now what it weirdly enough made me feel okay with it was when people would say, again, it's kind of like that belief instilled in you before you have it. You deserve it. Have fun. Don't worry. We'll take care of everything. And I was like, oh my God, what a relief. I thought I was going to be felt judgment and like, why are you slacking? No days off, like TGIF, let's, grind includes Friday. And I was like, oh man, like that. Thank you. That was a gift. Like, just knowing that you guys are happy to hear that, because I think your team can read it on you when you're burnt out and you need a break. And they also know, hey, just be prepared, guys, because when he comes back, he's going to be charged up and we're going to be going, even harder. So I wanted to share that personal experience on that note, because I think others can relate. But yeah, keep on going, Billy. I think this is great stuff.
Yeah, here's another point to that. One of my favorite quotes is, you can't give what you don't possess. And that's kind of what you're saying. If your gas tank is empty, then you're not going to be able to pour into other people. And being a leader, what is a leader? A leader is somebody who has influence. Who has influence? You have influence. You, the listener, you have influence, or you are a leader, and it's not an easy job. It's a very difficult job, and you need to be taking care of yourself. So I encourage you, and this is slightly off topic, but encourage you to build in those different rhythms. Vacations, I think, are just the starting point. I think there's much more than that. I think you need to have annual rhythms, quarterly rhythms, monthly rhythms, and weekly rhythms, and even daily rhythms. I'll just touch on the weekly. You need to have at least a period of time. I do 24 hours where there is no work that's paid or unpaid for me. And it's part of my faith experience in doing that. But even if that's not your standpoint, there is so much value in completely separating yourself from the business for a period of time. You can, whatever it is for you, maybe it's 12 hours, maybe it's 10 hours, but I know people that work in 7 days a week. How are you going to be able to generate ideas? How are you going to be able to stay fresh and energetic? The people in your life deserve more. And then daily, which is not always easy, building in a rhythm. If you're just going from beginning to end, it's going to catch up with you.
Yes. Fantastic advice. And yeah, I think these are all great things that the listeners can take and implement. And I wanted to dive back into what we know is like the root of a lot of these, financial issues that people face. What if someone has icky feelings about money? Like I, encounter that in our business. We help gym owners with gym reinforcements. We do sales oftentimes because the owner does not like it. They're like, and you hear it in the language, I don't like sales. I don't like talking about money. I don't like asking for money. I don't like having to feel pressuring people to close. And we just say you're going after it the wrong way. So like, that's okay. Like while you're going through that, we're going to go and take care of it for you. But I also want to circle back and help that person eventually to kind of like work through that. So how do you help someone that has problems, mentally in terms of talking about money, their comfort level, or, just working through money mindset issues overall?
Man, that's such a good question. There's so much to that. Let me give you a few points. One is this idea of, this is interesting. Why do we see ourselves the way we do? It's kind of a trick question, but it's not. And I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I will kind of give you the question and the answer. But it's usually people don't get this. So I encourage you, let's play a little game as you're listening to this. Why do you see yourself how you do? You can actually use any area for that. So you could say, why do I see myself as the type of husband I am, wife I am, parent I am? But we could stick with the finances. Why do I see myself as the way that I do as far as finances? And what's really kind of fascinating is there's actually one main reason why. So I want you to not answer out loud. You could, I mean, nobody's going to know if you're alone, but what is that reason? Why do you see yourself that way? And I'm going to tell you that the main reason why you see yourself that way is because that's what you do. We are all seeing ourselves the way we do because of what we do. So we see ourselves, how we see ourselves because of what we do. And one example I use is somebody who's always late. Why do they think to themselves, I'm always late? It's not a trick question. It's because they're always late. Do you think somebody who's always 10 minutes early ever thinks of themselves as somebody who's always late? I mean, it sounds so simple and so silly, but that's the thing. So it's kind of like it's a double-sided coin. On one coin, we have our identity, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And we've already talked about some of it is shifting that identity. And one of the cool ways that I do that with myself and with others, it's similar to working out. I just think it's so interesting, the parallels between finances and fitness, in that I believe people are better off in getting the satisfaction out of the actually doing the workouts than the results. For example, if I need to lose 10 pounds to be happy, that might be really discouraging. But if I'm happy that I do my workouts that I planned, that's the goal. So I'm getting the satisfaction out of doing that. So I'm a better person because I got up, I went to the gym, I pushed myself. I believe for lots of people, that's a better attitude because it's not dependent on the results. It's just dependent on their effort. And same thing financially. Until you can see yourself or until you can get more satisfaction or happiness out of being a person that's responsible with money, so saving money, for example, rather than just spending it frivolously, it's going to be a really difficult road. If you always see spending as better, that's why we do things, because we think that we see them as better for in a large way. So if we could shift that mindset of I'm enjoying the process of saving money, maybe we gamify it. That really works wonders for people. How do we gamify it? And it could be something simple. It could be putting a chart on your wall that you color in every time you save $100 or every time you move a step towards that goal. We had tons of those around our house. We had the most romantic bedroom. I had like charts everywhere that were filling out of debts that we paid off and savings goals that we had. But those things really do work. And then we also do an identity exercise with people. So this is powerful. I'll kind of share it quickly. And that is to answer that question that I asked before, which is how do you see yourself around money?
Mhm.
And then you can look to gradually change that. Let's say you say to yourself, I see myself as somebody who just never saves money, isn't good with money, doesn't know numbers. Okay, let me give you two strategies for that in those examples. Number one, I want you to create the gap. So that's how you see yourself now. How do you want to see yourself? Okay, I want to see myself as somebody who is responsible, somebody who is managing money well, somebody who takes care of the family, somebody who is building their wealth. Okay, that's the gap. Now, what has to happen? So here's a powerful question. Who do I need to become the person I want to be? Who do I need to become the person I want to be? Okay, I need to become somebody who now creates a plan, who spends a little bit of time in that. Oh, that's really scary because I don't see myself as that. Well, the only way to see yourself as that is to start, as James Clear says in Atomic Habits, to start making little deposits or casting votes for that identity that you want to have for yourself. So how do you cast a vote? It's by taking one of those actions. Two other pieces to that. One is I really like the idea of thinking about other areas. I just did this morning because I'm just like everybody else and I'm growing a second business and I have my own stuff that I have to deal with, whether it's an imposter syndrome or fear or how can I sell financial coaching? These people are struggling financially. I have all the same thoughts, just like everybody else. But what I can do is I can look at other areas that I have achieved or have overcome or have learned something new. It's all about that growth versus fixed mindset. The fixed mindset is all about where I am. This is how things are. They're not changeable. But the growth mindset says this is a process and I'm in the process of becoming the person I need to be. I'm learning. I'm better today than I was yesterday. I'm not worried about everybody else. I'm worried about my path and how I can improve gradually over time. So what did I do in other areas? Well, I'm not going to start bragging too much here, but I have a second-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I went from a kid who was bullied to a champion in martial arts and then a professional martial artist. What else? I paid off $130,000 in non-mortgage debt. And maybe you're listening and you're like, oh, I haven't done that. That's fine. That's not my point. My point is to look at the things you've learned something, you've overcome something. So if you could overcome that, maybe you played sports in high school and it was really hard, or maybe you improved your grades, or maybe you've improved a relationship. What can you translate to your financial identity? And then finally, it's looking to other people. I think there's so much power in looking to other people. I'll give you an example. I'm a podcaster, fellow podcaster like you, Dustin. And maybe I feel a little clunky. I don't know the best strategies for podcasting. So I see myself as somebody who, is it really worth it? Is anybody really listening? Is it really does it make a difference? Maybe I should just stop. I want to see myself as somebody who I'm confident behind the mic. I have life-changing information to share. I want people hanging on to my words because they're going to make a difference in their lives. I want to see them experience positive change. I want to grow the audience, not because I think it looks cool, but because I really want to reach more people. I want to have great conversations. I know this guy, Dustin, and he's pretty skilled on the podcast. What kind of things does he do? Well, he prepares 30 minutes for each episode. He reads books on connecting and communicating. He plans out his schedule. He learns a little more about technology. And it's like anything else. All of those things are very learnable, just like it is financial. And that's a piece of encouragement I have is if I can do this, I really mean this, anybody can do it. I had no advantage. I never learned anything about money growing up. Now I'm often quoted as a financial expert by the top leaders in our industry.
You are.
And thank you. And it was only through learning simple things one at a time. And that's what I try to do is take out the complexity, because there seems to be this thing that complicates it. And fitness is like that too in a lot of ways, but it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Billy, I just want to say thank you, man, because the work that you're doing is important. I'm listening. Many others are. And the work that you are doing is very, very important. And it is impactful. And I just want to highlight that you went from being bullied to being a professional confidence builder. And that happens in not only health and wealth, because when your body changes, you get more confidence. Well, when you have a certain amount of money in the bank, you have a lot more swagger. You have confidence, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is essentially what your life's work is. You are giving people confidence, the same confidence that bully tried to rob you many years ago. And that's why they say things like your trauma is your triumph, and your mess with that non-mortgage debt becomes your message. And so I just want to put you on a pedestal, man, and say thank you for everything you do for the fitness industry, for your fellow coaches and gym owners, and help them to become just in a better place, stability wise, and then also to have more abundance in their life. And that comes because you chose to step up and help. And so thank you for everything you give back to this industry, man. It's very, very important work. So I appreciate you.
And thank you, Dustin. You really made my day. And I'm so honored to be on your show and to connect with new people that might not have otherwise heard this information. And I'll just throw it a little bit back at you. I'll just say my experience with you in the last, this is a lesson for your listeners on, we've been communicating online, and I'm sure you can relate that nowadays you just never know who's on the other side of those messages. There's all types of people with different agendas, and you just never know, but you are a real one. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I'm really glad that we connected.
Love it. Billy, where can people learn more about you and what you do and help them to get stronger in the financial area of their life?
Yeah, sounds good. I appreciate that opportunity as well. I need to get better at having a great system, but I would say the best places would be the podcast. So it's Your Fitness Money Coach podcast. I would just encourage you. I'm a people person, so I'd love for you to reach out and even share a takeaway, any questions that you might have. The podcast. And then for messaging, I would say I'm not like this big social media guy, but Instagram or Facebook would be great places to connect with me. And then we can kind of go from there if there are any other resources.
Love it. All right. Well, guys, yes, definitely go check out Billy's podcast and, send him a message with your questions. He's a very helpful guy, and I know he'll get back to you. Again, we appreciate everything you do, Billy. Thanks for the episode. Thanks for all the great value. And guys, we'll see you next week for another episode of Lunch with a Punch.